Back before time existed, there was nothing. Within that infinite nothingness, there was us, the gods of this universe. Though, in truth, the word gods meant nothing to us then. We drifted through the void aimlessly, with no wants, no needs, no goals. But then, something changed. Almost all at once, every one of us felt a shift, a strange and unexplainable awakening in our thoughts. My sister, Illumina, grew restless, bored, bitter. Too tired of the endless nothing, of the void without purpose. Anger took root in her, born from the questions we could not answer. What was our purpose? Where had we come from? I urged her to be patient. Surely there had to be a reason for our existence. It simply had not revealed itself yet. But my words fell on deaf ears. Soon she began to sway some of our siblings to her side. Again I pleaded with her, and with the others, to wait, to endure. But her impatience only deepened, her fury only grew. Until at last, Illumina snapped. Her rage reached its peak, and she refused to hear me any longer. With no one and nothing else to unleash it upon, she turned her wrath toward me. In that moment, the rest of our siblings were forced to choose, and so the first clash among us began. All but one joined the struggle, Morris, who watched in silence. The conflict was brutal, heartbreaking. I did not wish to harm my sister, but I could not allow her rage to go unchecked. So I fought back, alongside those who stood beside me. And then it happened. Our battle grew so fierce, so vast. The void itself trembled. It rippled, it shook, until it all burst into a blinding explosion of power. When the fighting subsided, silence fell. We looked upon what remained, and in the wake of our war, from the void, had sprung forth something new, something phenomenal. An ever-expanding universe before our very eyes. At first, the newborn universe was barren, filled with nothing but cooling plasma and magic. But in time, we noticed something remarkable. Celestial bodies taking shape, galaxies swirling into life, and most importantly, mortal life beginning to spring forth. When the universe grew to a densely populated state, we felt it again, the same shift within our minds, an unspoken pull guiding each of us to focus on a specific aspect of this creation. As I watched the mortals, I became captivated by the finality of their existence, the fleeting spark of their lives, and the mysteries that lingered in the shadows beyond their end. I grew obsessed with the question of what awaited them after death, and with what I might provide them when their time came. In that moment, I, Nictona, became the embodiment of darkness and of death. Illumina, naturally, was defiant toward me and still harboring a form of anger. She proclaimed herself my opposite, crowning herself the goddess of life and luminosity. But it was Amoris who surprised us most. They lingered, watching mortal kind longer than any of us, studying their every nuance with unwavering detail. Morris became enthralled by the way mortals live through emotion, their love, their hatred, their yearning, and their fury. And in time, Morris chose a path none of us foresaw. They became the living embodiment of love and of war. For a time, there was peace among us. The gods stood united, each of us watching over creation, content with the roles we had chosen. It should have remained that way, but it did not. I must admit, the first mistake was mine. Among the mortals, there was one race that drew my gaze more than any other. The Lithari of planet Erdmost, graceful, long-lived, elf-like beings. Something in them stirred me in a way I had never experienced before. Against the silent law we had all abided by, I was first to break the boundary between God and mortal. I walked among them. I spoke to them. And in time, I even fell in love with one of them. From that union was born a child unlike any seen before. The first Shadow Lithari, my child. When my siblings discovered this, their balance shattered. Some praised my boldness and followed my example, taking mortal lovers, allies, or worshippers of their own. Others saw it as corruption, as desecration. Yet, even they could not resist the temptation for long. Soon, gods across creation were shaping mortal lives directly, some with gentleness, others with cruelty. And mortals, once content to revere us, began to suffer. Some gods uplifted them, but others enslaved them, twisted them, used them as tools for their own designs and desires. Inevitably, resentment grew, anger burned, and at last the mortals rose in defiance. An uprising unlike anything we had foreseen erupted. The younger gods rushed to take sides, some fighting with mortals, others against them. Only Illumina, Amoris, and I remained apart, watching in silence, bound by grief and by duty, unable to intervene. The war dragged on for centuries. Blood, fire, and ruin spread across the very universe we had birthed. Neither side could claim victory, until one day we felt it again. That unmistakable shift in thought. But this time, it was not for us. Instead, immortals changed. Within them awoke a power unlike any seen before. Not the simple sparks of magic we had seeded into the cosmos, but something greater, wilder. A force so potent, so terrifying, that even the gods trembled to witness it. With this new strength, the tide of war turned. From among the mortals rose a band of heroes, united against both cruel gods and their followers. At their head stood a woman whose name would be etched into eternity. Malice of the Unbroken. At last, the war ended. Mortals stood triumphant, their chains shattered, their voices unyielding. We gods had no choice but to bow to them. As a final act, we bestowed upon the mortals gifts, blessings to guide them, to aid them, and to remind them of what they had won. Then, one by one, my siblings cast themselves out of the mortal realm, retreating to a realm beyond the veil, a dimension we came to call the Overlap. Illumina, Amoris, and I tried to follow them, but we could not. The three of us found ourselves bound, tethered by the very concepts we had become. I was darkness and death. Illumina was light and life. Amoris was love and war. These truths rooted us too deeply in the fabric of the world to ever leave it. And so, while our siblings faded into legend, the three of us remained. And yet, despite their victory over the gods, the mortals were never the same. Triumph came at a price too great to measure. None bore that burden more than Malice. She had been the unshakable pillar of mortal kind, the beacon who led them through the storm, but the war left scars even she could not escape. Ironically, the woman with the name The Unbroken was shattered within. In time, the hope she once embodied twisted into something darker. Nallis became not a savior, but a figure of dread who would haunt the galaxy for centuries, her terror left unchecked. And so, this is where our story turns. This is how the death of Nallis, once the greatest of heroes, turned the biggest tyrant, became the spark that plunged the universe into chaos. On the planet of Enigma in the year 45027 AIM, that's after invention of modules. You'll learn about this shortly. There is a Fermani, human woman by the name of Lorelei. Lore Brimanos. She trudges through a sandstorm that would kill any other Fermani. As sand and debris bounce off of her, she feels her arm vibrate and hears a notification ping from her module.
Barova, this is the 30th time you've called me. It's starting to get annoying. I'm hauling about 3 tons of meat right now so you all don't starve. I need to focus.
Trust me, General Brimanos, you're the last person I want to be calling over and over, but your damn girlfriend, your partner, General Olok, gave me specific orders to check up on you periodically. And I'm not about to disobey her. So, deal with it.
Watch your tone before you get demoted again. And just tell Nair I'm fine.
Can do.
He immediately ends the call, and Lore continues on her way back to the village. Lore looked back at the stasis net that she was dragging her game in.
Net's still holding. That's good.
The net was reliable. It was one of her many creations, but she had been using it for days longer than she usually would, and if the charge went out, meat would go bad before she got back to the village. Hours passed. Lore continued through the storm, complaining quietly to herself. Suddenly, her body went on high alert. She was being watched, and the storm was making it so that she couldn't tell how many eyes were on her. Lore threw down the net and scrambled for her dagger. She already knew she was being hunted by the sanguine jackals. They were one of the few creatures on Enigma besides herself that could handle a sandstorm of this magnitude. The sanguine jackals were labeled as an invasive species native to Enigma. They were opportunistic hunters, so Lore figured they had caught the scent of carcasses that she had been dragging through the storm. The storm roared around Lore, the wind whipping sand and debris into a frenzied dance. Normally, the sanguine jackals wouldn't pose much of a challenge for her. She could handle herself and fight, but the long journey and the relentless storm had drained her. She was weary, her muscles aching, and her mind fogged with exhaustion. The jackals closed in, their dark silhouettes growing clearer through the swirling sand. Their gaunt, emaciated bodies made their skeletal structures more prominent, with ribs protruding beneath thin layers of dusty gray and sandy tan fur. Their sunken eyes and gaunt faces gave them a haunting appearance as they desperately searched for sustenance. Lore knew she was in trouble. She was cornered and outnumbered. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the inevitable fight.
All right, let's get this over with.
The moment she moved, they were upon her. The first jackal lunged, knocking her to the ground, its razor-sharp teeth snapping inches from her face. Lore gritted her teeth, and with a burst of strength, shoved her dagger into its gaping maw, blade piercing clean through its head. The jackal collapsed, but 2 more immediately replaced it, their claws slashing at her. Lore sprang to her feet, evading their attacks with agile movements. She dashed at the 2 jackals, delivering a powerful drop-kick to one, sending it flying with an audible crunch. The other jackal snarled and lunged, but Lore's dagger found its mark, and it fell lifeless to the ground. The remaining 5 jackals circled her, their eyes glinting with a predatory intelligence. They had sent the weaker ones first, testing her strength. 2 larger, slightly better-fed jackals stepped forward, readying themselves for the next attack. Lore charged for her dagger, but one of the jackals intercepted her with a forceful slam. For a moment, she was surprised. She had never seen the jackals act so strategically, but she quickly composed herself. As she hit the ground, both jackals pounced. She kicked one in the throat, and it coughed and hacked in pain. The second jackal slashed at her in a frenzied assault, and she narrowly avoided the blows, one claw grazing her arm. Lore shot to her feet and sidestepped an incoming attack, then cocked her arm back and punched the jackal square in the chest as it lunged at her, sending it crashing to the ground. A roar reverberated through the storm, shaking Lore to her core. The largest jackal, clearly the leader, stepped forward. It was an imposing figure, its dark eyes fixed on her. It let out another roar, and the injured jackals retreated. The leader gestured with its snout toward her dagger, surprising Lore by allowing her to retrieve it. They both readied themselves, a tense silence settling between them. The leader struck first, its claws slashing down across her face, narrowly missing her eyes.
Shit!
The pain was searing, but bearable. She retaliated with an upward slash, her dagger slicing the jackal's chest, but the wound was superficial. The jackal countered with a slash to her thigh, and Lore gritted her teeth through the pain. She stabbed down on the jackal's paw, causing it to roar in agony. With her free hand, she delivered a forceful uppercut, sending the jackal stumbling backward. The leader began to pace, its eyes never leaving her. The jackal suddenly let out a low growl, and the 2 uninjured jackals dragged the bodies of their fallen comrades away. The other injured jackal limped after them, disappearing into the swirling storm. Lore and the leader locked eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. She slowly sheathed her dagger, and the jackal leader limped away, joining the others. Just before it vanished into the sandstorm, it glanced back at her, its dark, tarry eyes sending a shiver down her spine. And then, the sanguine jackals were gone, leaving Lore alone in the howling storm. Lore's body finally relaxed, her muscles unclenching as the adrenaline ebbed away. The sanguine jackals were gone, their eerie forms swallowed by the storm. She needed to focus. Home was still a long way off, and the storm showed no signs of relenting. With a grimace, she limped over to the net she'd fought so hard to protect and yanked it up, securing it to her side. As she trudged onward, Lore lifted a hand to her face, feeling along the length of the fresh wounds. She winced as her fingers traced the 3 diagonal cuts. Blood and sand mixed on her fingertips, the grit burning in the open wounds. She could feel a piece of flesh hanging off, but didn't want to know what part of her face was missing. She continued on, her mind shifting to thoughts of home. The village would be a welcome sight after the ordeal, a sanctuary from the relentless storm and the dangers it concealed. Each step was a struggle, but she pressed on, driven by the promise of safety and rest. The landscape around her was a blur of shifting sands and shadows, the storm distorting everything in its path. She squinted, trying to make out familiar landmarks, but the visibility was too poor. All she could do was trust her instincts and keep moving forward. Her thoughts drifted back to the jackals. They had acted with a level of strategy and intelligence that was unnerving. Lore had encountered them before, but never like this. They had coordinated their attacks, learned from her movements. She shook her head again, focusing on the task at hand. She had to get home. There would be time to ponder the jackal's behavior later, once she was safe. The storm was unrelenting, and every step felt like a battle against the elements. Hours later, Lore finally emerged from its relentless grip. The howling wind and stinging sand gave way to a landscape of dead grass, its brittle blades crunching underfoot. The storm's edge marked a stark boundary between chaos and the eerie calm of the night. The sky above was pitch black, and Lore had to rely on a faulty lighting rod that flickered weakly, casting dim, erratic glows around her. In the distance, she saw the warm orange glint of the lights of the village piercing through the darkness. Relief washed over her. She was almost home. The thought of finally collapsing into her own bed after days in the wild was almost overwhelming. Her knees threatened to buckle under her, but she pressed on. Glancing back, she noticed the stasis net was flickering, on the verge of going out, but she was close enough to the village now that it didn't matter. After another grueling 30 minutes, Lore finally reached the front gate. It loomed above her, tall, wide, and metallic, a formidable barrier protecting the village. 2 columns flanked the gate, each housing a guard who, at the moment, seemed oblivious to her approach. She couldn't help but smile every time she saw the gate. After all, she was the one who designed and built it. She placed a hand on the flat metallic wall, and it began to open slowly. Too slowly. The speed wiped the smile from her face.
One day. That's all I ask for. One day where my electronics aren't slow as... Any day now.
Lore's voice startled the guards at the top of the wall, and then once they noticed her, a few things immediately happened. When they recognized it was her, they scrambled down the stairs and touched the wall, making it open faster for her. Then, the involuntary noise the guard made when they got a good look at what was left of Lore's face.
Finally, you're back. You should take your sweet ass time. Ah! What the fuck happened to your face?
Your mother and I got a little too frisky last night. Now move. Also, who's up there with you?
Gwen. Why?
Oh, that's perfect. You two can take all this meat to Cross for me. Looks like you could use the workout.
Are you kidding? That's gonna take an hour!
Then you better get started.
Without another word, Lore makes her way into the village, leaving Brova and Quen struggling to carry the meat.
Lift with your legs?
Shut the hell up! I am! How the fuck did she get this all the way here by herself?
As she walked, she took in her surroundings. The village was a true example of resilience and resourcefulness, a beacon of life on a planet otherwise deemed lifeless. The streets were lined with housing units. Each unit was a sleek rectangular prism, designed to maximize space and efficiency. Built from sturdy, locally sourced materials, many inhabitants adorned the exteriors with personal touches such as brightly colored banners, intricate carvings, and makeshift gardens that added splashes of life and color to them. Lore walked past a central square where a few villagers were still milling about despite the late hour. A large communal bonfire crackled in the center, its warm glow casting dancing shadows on the nearby housing units. Around it, children played while adults chatted in small groups, their faces lit by the flickering flames. Some of them spotted Lore and gave her a variety of looks. Some seemed concerned, yet relieved. Others were terrified at the state Lore was in, and still more gave her looks that made her think they would have preferred if she had gotten lost in the storm. At one point, Lore walked by a local shop, her heart beating crazily as she spots Shara. one of the Shadow Lithari shopkeepers outside. Shara spotted Lore and smiled widely, but immediately recoiled. Her eyes widen and her hand flies to her mouth.
Nictona below. Your face. That looks really bad, Lo.
Lore just laughs and waves her off while continuing on to her home. Shara reaches out her hand and looks like she wants to say something, but quickly puts it down and grimaces. Lore notices Shara opening her module, but thinks nothing of it. She spots her housing unit down the path, the second largest in the village. Initially, she had tried to refuse it since she felt more comfortable outside, but the more friendly and outspoken villagers had insisted she make it her home, much to Yavar and his supporters' displeasure. They wanted to show their gratitude for all that she had done for them. To her left, further down the road, stood the largest unit, belonging to the chief and his family. Lore stumbled up the stairs to her unit, swiping her module over the malfunctioning scanner several times before it finally unlocked. As soon as she stepped inside, fatigue overwhelmed her, and she collapsed onto the soft, carpeted floor.
This is so nice. Maybe I should sleep here more often.
Just as she feels herself about to drift off, she hears a familiar shifting of boots and slight sigh. Then she hears a knock at her door.
Come in, Nair.
The door opened wide to reveal Nair Olok, a woman who was, all at once, Lore's partner in command, her most worthy rival, her dearest friend, and the undeniable love of her life. One love, at least. Nair's gaze immediately fell on Lore's face. Her eyes widened slightly, but she kept her composure.
Looks like Shara was not exaggerating the slightest. You know part of your face is hanging off, right? God, that looks fucked. Let me guess. Pack of hungry jackals?
Right on the money. Hey, can we talk about what you said
Shush.
before?
I have med salve and disinfectant spray. Pick one.
Alright, rude. Spray on the face and salve on the rest.
I had a feeling you'd say that. That pretty face of yours should scar up nicely then.
With practiced precision, she began to apply the med salve to Lore's arm. Her touch was surprisingly gentle, given the juxtaposition of the near-permanent scowl that painted Nair's features. She then moved on to Lore's thigh, applying the salve there as well. The wounds quickly healed, leaving no scars behind. Nair then put the med salve away and produced a metallic cylindrical spray can. She moved closer to Lore, studying her facial wound with unbreathable intensity. At this distance, Lore couldn't help but think that Nair looked beautiful. Her features were both sharp and regal, reflecting her strong and determined nature. However, alongside this strength, there was a delicate softness that only seemed to grow when she was with Lore. Lore's eyes found their way to Nair's nose, slightly misshapen from the sheer amount of times it had been broken in scuffles with bandits and raiders. It was one of the physical features Lore loved most about her. She had tucked her long, flame-like orange hair up into a messy bun. A small, almost imperceptible smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, as her soft yet piercing jade eyes assessed Lore, and she sprayed Lore's face. The wound quickly scarred over, leaving 3 lengthy gash marks across Lore's entire face. Nair's expression softened a bit more as she reached out and trailed her fingers along the scars. She trailed her fingers up and down, while resting her free hand against Lore's cheek. Lore closed her eyes and sighed deeply at the contact. She was used to this. This had become almost a ritual for them at this point. Anytime they'd come back from a battle, this would be the routine for them, one of the few ways they could outwardly show their affections. Only this time, Lore expected to skip it completely, given how things went the last time the two saw each other. The tension was too much to handle, so Lore spoke up.
Hey, so next time I go out on a hunt, don't have Brova check up on me. Have Quen do it or something.
What? Why?
I'm not really a huge fan of the passive-aggressive, emphasis on aggressive thing he has going on. I'm pretty sure he's still bitter about the breakup.
The breakup that happened 10 years ago? Noted.
Yeah, I have that effect on people.
They both chuckled softly, but then the comment stuck in the air, leaving them in an awkward silence that neither of them seemed eager to break. Then suddenly, Nair took a deep breath and filled the silent air with her voice, which was much softer now, her militant facade cracking just slightly.
Listen, I didn't mean all that shit I said before you left. My father got in my head and...
No shit. The whole "I don't belong with an outsider" spiel was straight out of his playbook. He needs better material.
Can you shut up for a second? Please, this is serious.
Ooh.
My father is attempting to move up the Accords.
Lore's heart drops as Nair lets the revelation hang in the air for a long while.
He can't do that!
I'm almost 30, Lore. He absolutely can.
Lore feels a swarm of complex emotions swirling inside her as she tries to process this.
How long?
He leaves for the neighboring village tomorrow morning. But don't worry, I have a plan.
A plan? Mind telling me what it is?
Not right now. Tomorrow, after my father leaves and takes his loyalists with him, I have to actually do some shit before finalizing everything.
Why do I have a feeling I'm not gonna like this plan?
Nair doesn't answer immediately. She stands up and makes her way to the door. She pauses at the threshold and gives Lore a look of determination that she hadn't seen in over a decade.
That's because you won't. But it's the only option we have. I have no intention of being sold off. And I have no intention of leaving you or Shara behind. You two are the only ones who make this life bearable.
Without another word, Nair quickly makes her exit, leaving Lore behind with a massive amount of turmoil and confusion. Lore rises and walks slowly to bed, collapsing onto the soft sheets face first. She attempted to sleep, and though utterly exhausted, couldn't relax right away. The Nair conversation replaying in her mind over and over until she finally drifted off to sleep. Lore shut awake 10 hours later. She sat up, feeling rejuvenated and very hungry. She shuffled off the bed and stomped her way to the bathroom. Lore stared at her reflection in the mirror, feeling a mix of emotions. She traced the new scars on her face, remembering the pain she felt when the jackal attacked her. She wondered if it made her look more fierce or more ugly. She'd always been a bit self-conscious about her appearance, feeling too tall, too muscular, too dark for anyone to find her attractive. She was vastly different from anyone here. For the most part, the men in the village found Lore too intimidating, or simply didn't want to mingle with the outsider, so she never had much luck with them. But she didn't care, since her current circumstances were better than what any man in the village could offer. She sighed and pulled back her locks and braids, admiring the metal designs she had woven into them. She had spent hours crafting them, using scraps of metal she found in the wasteland. She looked into her own eyes, trying to find some spark of confidence or happiness. She knew she had a lot to be grateful for. She had survived countless brushes with death. She had found a family among a few of the villagers, and maybe even love, complicated as that seemed to be. She had proven herself to be brave and loyal, smart and resourceful, and generous. She had done things that most people could only dream of, things that should give her a sense of purpose. But she didn't feel that. She felt caged. She turned away from the mirror, got dressed in her guard armor, and left her housing unit. As Lore stepped outside, she looked up at the sky. It looked the same as any other day, in orange haze, sand, and clouds covering it completely. The pollution on Enigma constantly shrouded the atmosphere, so they rarely saw their star. She sighed and descended the steps of her unit, the desolate streets stretching out before her in the early morning light. The village thrived during the night, which was evident now more than ever. It was likely because no one wanted to constantly see such a depressing sky. She walked the path up to the banquet hall, hoping to find the front door open. Lore tapped the door, but nothing happened. She sucked her teeth in annoyance. The banquet hall was large enough to accommodate all of the villagers, so the walk to the back door was a couple of minutes away. She started toward the back, greeting the guards stationed around the hall with a nod and a muttered "good morning." As she finally reached the back door, she spotted Kro's Oluk and the last person she wanted to see today, Yavar Oluk, the chief of the village. Yavar was a tall, slightly portly man with fiery red hair, his only resemblance to his daughter. He had a short, dense beard that matched the vibrancy of his hair. Despite his robust frame, Yavar's slight chubbiness added an approachable and inviting quality to his appearance. But Lore knew better. Nobody who truly knew Yavar would ever describe him as an approachable or inviting individual. As soon as Yavar's eyes landed on Lore, she felt a chill unlike she'd ever felt. He was smiling at her, warmly, genuinely. She hadn't ever seen him in such a good mood, which was worrying. And so were the words Yavar spoke next.
Good morning, General Brimanos. Lovely day, isn't it?
Well, I guess.
Lore quickly shoots a worried and confused glance at Krols, who looks just as perplexed. He shakes his head and shrugs. Yavar's smile grew wider as he clearly noticed their confusion and discomfort.
Something the matter, General?
Not at all, sir. Just not used to seeing you with an expression that isn't disdainful.
Lore made the comment to truly gauge Yavar's current mood, and to her surprise and horror, he just chuckled.
Understandable. I can be a tad abrasive.
A tad?
In any case, I feel as though a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, like I'm finally about to be rid of something burdensome.
He lets the comment sit for a moment. It's obvious that he's not trying to be subtle with what he's hinting at. The Accords. Nair. A small hint of rage bubbled inside Lore as she felt her eye twitch. Yavar looked as though he was going to say more before he was quickly interrupted by a ping on his module. He read the message and smiled.
Well, I'm off for a few days. I'm leaving my village in your capable hands, General Brimanos. Yeah, try not to leave this place in ruins while I'm gone.
With that, Yavar took his leave, quickly being shadowed by a few guards who had been by the walls of the banquet hall. Once they were out of sight, Lore immediately turned her attention to Krols.
I think I would have preferred if he just insulted me, or called me Lorelei like usual. That was just... ugh.
Tell me about it. The fucker told me he loved me before you showed up. First time I ever heard the word come out of his mouth. Anyway, thanks a ton for the meat you brought in. Gonna be feeding this place consistently for months thanks to you. Oh, and of course...
He walks into the banquet hall for a moment, and then returns with a sandwich neatly wrapped in some paper. Lore immediately took in the savory aroma, inhaling deeply.
Thank you so much.
Froze nods and smirks slightly before his face suddenly shifts to a more serious expression, which immediately put Lore on guard.
Listen, I hate to spring this on you first thing in the morning, but if I know my sister, she didn't fully tell you about the plan like I asked her to. You know you'd have most of the village support.
Don't you dare finish that fucking sentence, Rosie. You of all people should know not to talk like that.
No. Lore, listen to me. We both know the Accords are coming. We're already past the point of no return.
Stop. I'm not having this conversation with you right now.
Alright. Can you at least talk to Nair then?
That was the plan. I'll see you later. Love you, Rosie.
Love you too.
Lore inhaled and walked off toward the opposite side of the village where her barracks were. But before she did that, Lore decided to take a detour to the village shop. Lore made her way to the front of the store where Shara's father, Kareth, was busy tending to the outside market. The moment his eyes caught hers, the man completely abandoned the poor customer standing in front of him.
Lore!
He rushed her with the force of a small avalanche, pulling her into a massive Arcoso hug that would have shattered most bones. Lore, however, took it easily.
It's always so nice to see you.
He looked her over, eyes pausing on the new scars that carved across her cheek. It was a look of both pride and quiet worry. Lore could tell he was taking stock of her resilience all over again.
Is Shay inside?
Kareth didn't bother to answer verbally. His grin only widened as he nodded, then casually turned back to the now annoyed customer he had abandoned. Lore chuckled under her breath and headed into the store. The air inside was thick with the scent of pastries, sweet and heavy, almost enough to drown out the faint buzz of electronics lining the shelves. The place was an odd blend of a general store and a bakery, perfectly reflecting Kareth's strange balance of practicality and indulgence. Just then, Shara stepped out from the back, balancing a massive tray of freshly baked bread in one hand. She tapped the module on her wrist to her forehead and spoke softly into it.
Could we get someone by the store to take this bread to Cross? Thank you. Much appreciated.
Moments later, a guard entered, saluted Lore, grabbed the tray, and left in a hurry. Shira turned around and froze the instant she saw Lore standing there. Her smile was immediate and warm as she hurried closer. The space between them shrank fast until the two were nearly chest to chest. Shira's eyes searched Lore's face, studying the scars that hadn't been there before. Slowly, she raised her hand. Lore considered stopping her, but didn't. Shira's finger traced the scar across Lore's face slowly, carefully, and almost reverently. Her thumb brushed another line along her jaw. The moment lingered, fragile but charged. Then the bell above the door jingled. A customer entered. Shira flinched, pulling her hand back like she'd touched fire.
Oh,
I can wait.
Shira handled the customer quickly, and then turned back to Lore.
sorry about the touchy-feely stuff. I'm not sure if you realize this, but part of your face was literally hanging off last night.
Was it that bad? It's fine. Your touch isn't unwelcome.
Shira's lengthy ears burned red. She tried to hide her expression, but it was too late. Lore had already caught it.
Is that so? Well, before I misinterpret that, I wanted to ask you a few things. Most of them unrelated to... never mind.
What's up?
How attached are you to your position as Guard General?
Are you serious? You know it's the one thing keeping Ivar off my back.
I know, but are you comfortable? Is it fulfilling?
Lore paused. She hadn't been ready for that question. Her gut answered before her mind could. No. She'd climbed the ranks out of necessity, not desire. Her pride never came from orders or patrols. It came from building, inventing, creating something tangible.
Listen, I think I already know your answer, which is why I have an offer. My father and I, despite being here longer than most, still know what it feels like to be outsiders. We're the only Lithari here after all. So, we were wondering if you'd ever consider working with us. In the store.
It was a tempting offer. So tempting that Lore had to fight the urge to say yes immediately.
You don't have to answer now. It's just something to think about. I'd be elated to work closely with you if you did.
Yeah, I'll think about it. If things weren't so complicated, I'd give you a straight answer. That being said, working with you would be a dream come true. Though, I don't know how often I can take those Arcoso hugs from your father.
Shira's gaze fell to the floor, her cheeks still tinted red. There was more she wanted to say, but for now, silence filled the space between them for a while.
I asked Nair the same question a few days ago, but she just laughed in my face.
You should have expected that. It's Nair. If anyone's fulfilled with bossing around a majority of the village, it's her. She's a natural leader. And that's why Yavar wants her gone.
He won't get what he wants. Not this time.
Shira's words were delivered with a fierce passion and resolve that caught Lore off guard.
What's that mean, Shay? What does that mean?
Did Nair not talk to you last night?
She did. She told me she had a plan. She also said it wasn't finalized. But, judging by how you and Cross have been speaking, I'm assuming that was a lie.
I'm sorry, Lo. I can tell you if need be.
No need. Nair said she'd tell me today, and I plan on holding her to that.
Shira's shoulders slumped as she nodded in confirmation. Shira looked as if she wanted to say more, but just then she received a ping on her module. Lore found it strange, since it was a noise she'd never heard from a module. Shira paused, her face becoming pale with some sort of recognition. She checked the message, and for a moment, her face contorted with horror, but she quickly masked it.
Everything all right?
Yeah. Raiders attacked a shipment from a neighboring village that I was looking forward to.
Lore could immediately tell Shira was lying, but she didn't press for more information.
If you say so. I'm gonna head out now. It's almost late.
As Lore went to leave and say goodbye, Shira suddenly closed the distance between them and kissed her. It was tender, but also filled with a palpable desperation. Lore was shocked briefly, but surrendered to the kiss. The moment seemed to last forever before Shira finally pulled away.
I love you.
I'm not sure what's gotten into you, but I love you too, Shay. I'll talk to you later, okay?
Shira nodded silently as Lore left. Before the store was out of view, Lore noticed Shira run up to her father and urgently say something that she couldn't make out, despite her hearing being better than the regular Fermani. Whatever she said wiped the smile from Kirith's face, almost instantly. As Lore walked to her post, she tore into her sandwich, slowly approaching her destination. She then turned her gaze to the sky, and something seemed off. A group of clouds, very far in the distance, seemed to part, and then an object sped toward the ground. Lore figured it was another small comet hitting Enigma. It was a somewhat common occurrence, but her instincts were telling her otherwise. She made a mental note of it, and then moved on. Finally, Lore made it to her post, and subsequently finished her sandwich as well. She crumpled up the wrapper and shoved it in her pocket. As Lore walked into the building for her guard post, she scanned the area to see who was on duty. One of the guards near the door spotted her and scrambled to their positions. Once all the guards were in position, Lore's eyes fell on Quen.
Diomos, over here. The rest of you... I actually don't give a fuck what you do.
You need me, ma'am?
Yes, I have an assignment for you. An object fell out of the sky west of the village. I want you and your scouting team to go check it out. It shouldn't be anything out of the ordinary. It may even just be a meteor, but it never hurts to check. Could be full of resources if we're lucky. Now go.
Right away, ma'am. My team and I will be on frequency 23.3.
Lore tapped the frequency into her module and headed toward her office. Immediately upon stepping into her office, she could tell that someone had been in there and rummaging through her stuff. She figured that Yavar must have paid a guard to find any incriminating information on her, but had no luck. Ever since Lore had received the rank of Guard General, Yavar had made it his mission to get her removed from the position, with little to no results. Lore had earned her station the hard way, and there was nothing she was going to do to jeopardize that. It was true, though, she was an outsider, and it showed. She was the only Fermani in the village with skin as dark as hers, the only Fermani to possess freakish strength. And of course, she wasn't originally from this village. As Lore started to fix up her office and put things back where they were supposed to be, her mind wandered back to her past. She thought about her original village. The memories were a blur she could barely remember. She tried to make out the faces of her family, but failed. One of her earliest memories was her showing up at the current home as a child, battered and bruised from the long journey, and then a guard, a woman, carrying her to safety. That guard was a woman by the name of Nerisha Oluk. It was also the first time Lore met Nair. A sudden ping on Lore's module ripped her from the memory. She quickly tapped the module and spoke.
I read you, Diomos. Status?
We've spotted a massive crater and we're seeing a medium-sized ship at the center of it, ma'am. No pilot or other passenger spotted. How should we proceed?
Lore thought for a second. There was nothing in the guidelines for something like this. Ships weren't supposed to be able to land on Enigma since it was a dead planet. It had been that way for 2,000 years. After a long silence, Lore finally thought of an answer.
Head back to the base with your squad. We can inspect the ship with a larger team tomorrow. If anything, we could scrap it for some useful parts if the pilot is gone long enough. Or dead.
I hear you loud and clear. We're heading back now, ma'am.
Maybe I should give Quinn a promotion. Nah, he can wait.
She didn't realize she hadn't hung up yet until Quen's dejected voice came through along with the laughter of their squad mates.
Oh, that's fucked up, General.
She quickly hung up and stifled a laugh. She figured that Quen was due for a promotion after all. Lore continued fixing her office and then filed some reports on missions, including the one she sent Quen's squad on. A few hours passed by when Lore hears a knock at the door. It was Nair. Lore invited her in, and she quickly made her way into the office.
Good news. My father just left with his convoy. Since he never leaves without all of his loyalists, it should be safe to talk freely.
Yeah, now you can tell me this plan that you told Cross and Sheriff first.
Listen, this plan is complicated. And I know how you are, and
What's that supposed to mean?
it means that I need to be careful with what I say to you. I don't want another raider incident.
Nair couldn't look Lore in the eyes after saying that, knowing how much weight was behind the statement.
That was a long time ago. And I've matured since then. Besides, they killed Nerisha. I had every right.
I know. I just need you in the right headspace before I tell you this plan.
Lore reached forward and gripped Nair's hand softly, staring deep into her jade eyes and giving her a look of reassurance.
I can handle whatever this plan is. I promise.
All right. Fuck. Here we go. If we start preparing now, we could stage a coup against my father. We have the power, the influence, and the numbers. I know it doesn't seem like it, but the villagers look up to us. Especially you. If we were to exile him, or even end his life, only a few would dare to question it.
Lore absorbed Nair's words, the gravity of the situation sinking in. The plan was fraught with peril, but one undeniable, terrifying truth stood out.
The treaty. This would mean war with the neighboring villages.
Nair stared at Lore with unflinching determination.
If it means I can finally be with you, without any more restrictions, then I'm willing to face the consequences. Lore, every sacrifice is worth it if it means I can spend my life with you and Shara unabated.
Nair, these last 22 years have been a relentless struggle. I felt like a prisoner, constantly under threat. There were countless times I wanted to leave it all behind, but do you know what stopped me? The thought of you being here, alone. The thought of your father getting everything he fucking wants in the end. You and Shay would be forced out without my influence. I didn't stay here out of some sense of duty to the villagers. I stayed because I wanted to protect you. Because I love you. So that means starting a war. So be it.
Nair smiled, a real, unrestricted smile. Something Lore hadn't seen in years. Not since they were children. They moved closer, their breaths mingling, their hearts beating in desperate synchronization. Their lips were a mere breath apart when the fragile moment was shattered. Lore's instincts flared, propelling her to her feet. The building trembled violently, and before she could react, it collapsed in a deafening roar. The room began to crumple and warp in on them. Lore and Nair barely had enough time to dash through the door before the entire room crushed in on itself. The metal of the walls continued to bend in on themselves as Lore and Nair sprinted down the corridor and into the main hall. Immediately they could hear screaming. The pained screams shrieked their way through the village. Lore sniffed the air. The smell was unmistakable. Bodies were being burnt. Alive. They ran out of the building as it fully caved in on itself. A lot of the guards didn't make it out. Their screams and yells were followed by the sounds of their bones being crushed and the sound of rushing blood. Outside of the building, the damage was apparent. In an instant, the village was toppled and burned by unknown attackers. Nair grabbed Lore's shoulder.
You don't think this could be the raiders, do you?
Can't be. We took care of that problem, remember?
They both looked around while running through the village. The scene was gruesome. Bodies of guards and villagers alike lay butchered in the streets. Severed and charred limbs were scattered about, as well as other viscera. The two women couldn't believe what they were seeing. Lore quickly tapped at her module and shouted into it.
Diomos! Come in! Report! Quinn?
As they ran, they simultaneously led survivors to designated safe areas. The pair were filled with relief as Shira ran up to them. Her arm was bleeding, and she looked annoyed, not scared. Like this was an inconvenience rather than a brutal attack. Their relief was short-lived as a chilling figure with a faint, ominous red aura flickering around its feet descended from above, halting the women in their tracks. The figure was unnervingly tall and emaciated, its limbs stretching unnaturally long as if defying the limits of mortal anatomy. It was draped in a long, flowing red cloak that seemed to ripple with a life of its own. As the figure drew closer to the ground, its horrifying features became clearer to Lore, who was seized by an icy dread. The entity was a woman from a species that Lore had never encountered before, her presence both alien and dreadfully mesmerizing. Her face, a ghastly canvas of stark white, radiated a sickly allure that was deeply unsettling. The large, slanted eyes, the color of freshly spilled blood, stared unblinkingly with a cold, predatory intensity. Her mouth was a grotesque maw, perpetually agape, lined with countless long, black teeth that seemed to extend into an endless, gaping void. The very air around her felt heavier. Lore's body was on edge, screaming at her that she was in imminent danger. All of her instincts were telling her to run, but she was paralyzed with fear. Finally, the mysterious woman spoke. The words seemed to travel directly into their heads. In a cheerful voice, she said,
Question. This one is Quinn, right?
She lifted her cloak, pulled out a body, and dropped it in front of Lore and Nair. They both looked in horror as the mangled corpse of Quen Domos was dropped in front of them.
So you're the one who wanted to scrap my ship. That's kind of mean, but I don't blame you given the state of this place. Oops. I mean, before I got here.
Lore and Nair tried to run. They were immediately slammed onto their backs by an invisible force, knocking the wind out of both of them. After the woman let them recover, they tried to get back onto their feet, but it felt as if they were being weighed down. Suddenly, Lore felt her abdomen growing in temperature. She looked down, and the plating on her armor was starting to glow with heat. Lore then realized what was happening, and it seemed Nair did as well. They both scrambled to get their armor off while being weighed down and burned. Finally, they got their armor off and were only wearing their bodysuits. The woman clapped in joy and amusement as she watched them scramble.
Oh, wow. You two are smart. Usually people just scream like idiots while they're burning.
Her wide mouth warped into an unsettlingly toothy smile. But what really unsettled Lore and Nair more was what the woman said next.
Shara, I suggest you get over here. I'm about to start chucking shit, and I don't want you to get hit.
Lore and Nair's gaze immediately snapped to Shara, whose face was blank and unreadable, though a single tear fell down her cheek.
Shara Duskvale, I will not repeat myself.
With those simple words, Shara made her way over to the woman's side. The women, not giving themselves any time to process the betrayal, again tried to run, and this time they made it a bit further before the walls of a nearby housing unit were peeled off and slammed into them. As they hit the ground once more, Nair screamed out in pain. Lore looked over to see that Nair's arm had broken from the impact. Blood started to drip from their heads as they rose to their feet. Once again, the wall of the housing unit slammed into them, but with significantly more force this time. Lore felt her ribs crack as she fell to the ground a third time. Again, she rose to her feet, more blood flowing from her body. Lore looked to her side and realized that Nair hadn't stood up with her that time. She was still on the ground, clearly in a lot of pain. Her gaze was fixed painfully on Lore for a moment, and then she fell unconscious. The attacker was suddenly in front of Lore, their faces inches from each other.
You're pretty durable for Furmani. It seems Shara's reports were underselling you massively. You are quite the specimen. Exactly what I've been looking for. Your friend here, however.
Her gaze turned to Nair's unconscious body.
Don't you fucking dare! Shay, don't let her do this!
She threw a punch at the woman, but before it could land, Lore was lifted into the air by her hair. The woman pointed at Lore and laughed as the wall of the housing unit lifted into the air one last time. It slowly grew red hot, twisting and forming into a large, perfect cube. The cube hovered its way above Nair. Lore attempted to cut off her hair with a dagger, but it flew out of her hand, cutting deeply across her palm in the process.
None of that, please. Your hair looks too nice to ruin.
Lore could only watch in helpless despair as the metal cube hovered ominously above Nair. Her frantic shouts and anguished cries echoed in the air, drowned out by the cruel laughter of the mystery woman. Just as Nair began to stir, her eyes fluttering open, the cube plummeted with cruel swiftness, crashing into her with a devastating force far worse than before. Lore was thrown violently to the ground, her heart pounding with a frantic desperation. Crawling towards Nair's crumpled form, Lore's breath came in ragged gasps. She clutched Nair's limp body, the faint rise and ball of her chest barely perceptible. Nair's jade eyes, once vibrant and full of life, now flickered dimly as she gazed up at Lore. With a trembling effort, she tried to raise a hand to touch Lore's face, but her strength ebbed away, her arm falling weakly. Her lips moved in a feeble attempt to speak, but only a violent cough erupted, sending blood spilling from her mouth in alarming gushes. Lore's heart shattered as she listened to the agonizingly slow, irregular thuds of Nair's heartbeat. Tears brimmed in Nair's eyes, their once brilliant green fading into a lifeless, empty gray. Lore's world narrowed to the sight of Nair's face, her disbelief mingling with a deep, aching sorrow. The vivid memories of their moments together replayed in her mind, each one a haunting echo against the crushing reality of what she was currently facing. The woman suddenly grabbed Lore by the neck and lifted her off the ground.
Shara, where is your father?
Well, Lady Malice, when I informed him of your return, well, let's just say he didn't want to serve you anymore. I did what I had to do.
Good girl. Now, I have one final order for you. Take my ship and rejoin the fleet. Give Skyra your reports and tell the fleet that I've finally found my transfer.
Shira nods and immediately hurries off, not even giving Lore a second look.
Such an interesting specimen. Such a beautiful path. You are quite possibly the unluckiest fucker in the Anvil's galaxy right now. Oh, I wish I could be there to see how this turns out. But now I can finally rest. Good luck.
Suddenly, the worst pain Lore had ever felt shot its way through her entire body. The woman sighed with relief, as if the weight of the entire galaxy had been lifted off her shoulders. She let go of Lore, and they both dropped to the ground, the woman's body now completely lifeless. As the pain continued to travel through Lore's body, she slowly crawled towards Nair and held her in her arms. She then just sat there alone and in excruciating, constant pain, yelling in agony as the village burned to the ground and her best friend, the woman she loved, lay lifeless in her arms.